We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis in Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesubos Daf 53b. The Gemara here continues. Abaya says, Shkila tivusech shadya chizri. Take this favor that you did, you can throw it on the thorns, meaning this teaching that you have from Rav, and it's not a chiddush over here. Kvar tirgam Rav Hoshia l'shmaita beBavel, because Rav Hoshia has already taught this halacha in Bavel. In other words, the point is this halacha that in Arusa, let's say she dies, she doesn't get the ksuba. In this case, meaning to say that the husband does not have to bury her because it was only a situation of eris. That is not a chiddush from Ravin, says Abaya, because we've already learned that from Rav Hoshia. Rashi over here says, Shkila tivuse chizuk tovosecha shatas sover shenachzik lachtova. You thought that we would say, oh, you did us such a favor, bazuna tulihim imcham mutelas halacharulam. That's already thrown onto the thorns, meaning to say, again, already, we already learned this halacha. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Benon nukvan di yahavin lechi minoi v'chulu. Again, this is also a stipulation in the ksuba, and it means to say that the girls that we should have, this is what he tells the husband, says to his wife in the ksuba, that any girls that we have, they are going to be supported from this property. And the Gemara says, Rav Tani Rav, the way he understood the Mishnah was as follows, Ad the tilkachun leguvrin, that these daughters, they're going to be supported from my property until they get married. That's tilkachun leguvrin. The Levi Tani, but Levi, he taught the Mishnah as follows, Ad the tivgron, until they become bogeres, meaning to say until they become adults, then they will no longer be supported. And the Gemara says, L'Rav, according to Rav, Afagav de Bogar, even though she became a Bogeres, the Levi, Afagav de Insivin, and his Levi saying, even though she got married. Rashi over here says, L'Rav, Afagav de Bogar, Bitmia, Balo Bagros Motzia, Merishas Av. Isn't it true that when the girl becomes a Bogeres, she's no longer in the Rishus of the father? V'lomatezun mi beso, so therefore, why should she be supported from his household? In other words, Rav, who says that they have to get married, does he mean to say that even if she's a Bogeres, she is still going to get supported? That doesn't make sense. Ubein l'Rebbe, bein l'Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, shenachliku b'davar, beperek Metzia, so isha b'isur nechasim modim b'mizonos. Everybody agrees when it comes to mizonos, the bein nasu, bein bagru of the mizonos, whether they get married or whether they become Bogeres, is whether they become adults, they're not going to get the mizonos. So in other words, the Gemara is saying, l'Rav afagav de Boger, Rav saying even though she's a Bogeres, she's still going to get mizonos. V'levi afagav de and is Levi saying even though she got married, she's still going to get mizonos? That doesn't make sense. What do they mean? And so therefore the Gemara says, Ela bagar v'lo insiv, insiv v'lo bagar. Rather, let's say the girls become Bogereses, or let's say they get married and they're not Bogereses. Either way, whether they're Bogeres and not married, whether married and not a Bogeres, the kuli alma lo pligi, there is no machlokus over there in that situation. Of course, they will no longer be supported by the father's estate. Ki pligi bo arusa v'lo bagar. The machlokus over here between Rav and Levi is, let's say you have a situation where she is not a Bogeres and she didn't get married either, but she's just an Arusa, she was just betrothed. Rashi over here says, Ki pligi ba Arusa, Rav Amar ad the tilkachon kicha de erison. When Rav said ad the tilkachon leguvern, he means to say erison is enough. At that point in time, these daughters are no longer going to be supported. Ve'afilu lo bagar, even if they're not adults. Ula Levi, but according to Levi, o tevagron o yinosu, v'yetzim rishos av lagamri ki bagros. They have to either become Bogereses or they have to actually get married. Erison is not enough according to Levi, and they are still going to be supported even in the situation of Erison. Only when they actually get married do they leave the rishus of the father. That's what it means to say ki pligi barusa v'lo bagar. V'chein tani Levi b'masnise, and the Gemara says Levi also taught in the Brisa ad de tivgaron v'yimte zimnehon de insavon. He says until they become Bogereses and they reach the time of getting married. So first the Gemara says, Tarti, do you need to have both of these things? They need to become Bogeres and get married. Rather, no, it means to say, o tifgaron, either they become Bogeres, o yimte zimneon le'is nasava, or it becomes the time for them to get married. Rashi over here says, V'chein tani Levi b'masnise, Levi taught this in his Brisa, the Levi Sider Brisa Shisha Sadorim, Reb Chia Raboshi. Levi also had a set of Brisos, just like Reb Chia and Raboshi, and again the Gemara says, Tarti, you need both. Bitmi, that doesn't make sense. Rather, umoti zimneon higia zman shnei masar chodesh, again, the time has come. That's what it means to say. It was 12 months from the period of Erison was 12 months till the Nisuin. When they actually reach Nisuin, according to Levi, that is when they lose out on that support. And the Gemara continues, Ketanai, let us say that this machlokas here between Rav and Levi is also machlokas Tanoim, ad mosai habas nizonis, until when is the daughter supported by the father's property? Again, this is the stipulation of the Ketubot to support the daughters, ad shetayores, until the time of Erisin. That again, that's going to be the opinion similar to Rav until the time of Erisin. Mishum Rebbe Lazar Amru, in the name of Rebbe Lazar, they said ad shetevagir. It's until the time that they become bogeres, until they are adults. Tani Rav Yosef, now Rav Yosef taught ad de yehavyon, until there is havoya. Havoya implies some kind of marriage. We don't know exactly what it means. Iboilu, they asked the following question: Havoya de Erisin, does the word havoya refer to Erisin? Or havoya de Nesuin, or does the word havoya refer to Nesuin? When again do the daughters stop being supported from the estate of the father? And the Gemara says, take with that, we leave it as a question. We don't know whether this ad de yehavyon means that they get supported by the father until Erisin, or is it until Nesuin? And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Chisda le Rav Yosef. Rav Chisda said to Rav Yosef, Mishmi aloch minei de Rav Yehuda. Did you hear from Rav Yehuda? Arusa yesh la mizonos o ein la mizonos. Again, the same question as before. By a situation of a daughter who is an arusa, does she get mizonos from the estate of the father, or does she not get mizonos from the estate of the father? Amar le, so he said back to him, this is Rav Yosef saying back to Rav Chisda, Mishma lo shmieli, I didn't hear the answer from Rav Yehuda. Ala misvara lesla, but it makes sense logically to say that she does not get mizonos. Kevan di'ir solonichola de titzel, because since she was already betrothed to this husband, the husband doesn't want her to be disgraced, to be knocking on doors and begging for food, and therefore there's no need for her to get mizonos from her brothers from the estate of her father, because the husband, the person who she's going to marry, is going to support her. And the Gemara continues, Amar le, he said back to him, in mishma lo shmielach, if you didn't hear the answer, misvara isla, on the contrary, if we're going to be logical about it, she really should get mizonos from the estate of the father, kevan de lo kimla begava, because since he's not certain yet, he hasn't actually married her, she's just an arusa. So lo shadi zuzi bichti, he's not going to throw away his money for nothing. We can't rely on the aris, we can't rely on the person she's going to marry, that he's going to support her if she hasn't yet married him. And the Gemara continues, V'ika di'amri, some have the version as follows, Amar le said to him the opposite, Mishma lo shmieli, I didn't hear the answer, but misvara isla, he said misvara, logically she should receive mizonos. Kevan de lo kimle begava lo shadi zuzi bichti, because again, since he's not certain about her, he hasn't married her, he's not going to throw away his money for nothing. And then the response was the opposite. Amar le said back to him, Mishma lo shmielach, if you didn't hear the answer, misvara lesla, I would say that logically she shouldn't get the mizonos, kevan de'ir solonichale de titzel, because again, since it's a betrothed situation, the Aris is not going to want that his Arusa is going to be disgraced, and therefore he will support her. And the Gemara continues at the Tudat, Siman de Gavri Sag Zoraf Me'ana V'yivma Shnia Arusa V'ana. So these are mnemonics to remember the next Gemara. The Gemara says, Bo minei Rav Sheshes. They asked Rav Sheshes the following question. Mima Enes, let's say you have a situation of a girl, she was married, and then she does miyun, she refuses the marriage. This is talking about a girl who is a minor. So in that situation, she was a nesua, she was married, but on the other hand, she refused it, and she essentially retroactively undid the whole nesuin. So is she still entitled? Yesh la mizonos, or ein la mizonos? Is she entitled to mizonos, or does she not get mizonos? Again, because the question is, she retroactively undid the entire nesuin, so maybe she's still in the rishus of the father. As Rashi over here says, you have a situation, there's no father involved, she's an orphan, her brothers marry her off, so then she refuses it. So yesh la mizonos ad shetibagir, does she get mizonos until she becomes an adult, or lower, maybe not? Mia amrinon, do we say akratinu l'nisuin me'ekaran? She's uprooted the original nisuin. V'hava look, kamisha lo nisus, it's like a girl who was never married at all, and therefore she's entitled to mizonos. Odil moha nisus v'yatsa mirshasav, or maybe no, she's considered a married girl, she leaves the rishus of the father, and therefore she does not get the mizonos. This was the question they asked Rav Sheshes. So Amar Lu Rav Sheshes said to them, Tanisua, we learned the answer. Almona bevei grusha bevei. Let's say you have a situation of a widow, but she's still in the house of her father, meaning to say it's from Erisin, or she's divorced in the house of the father, meaning she's divorced while it was still Erisin. Vishomeres Yavam Bevei Savir, or let's say she's awaiting Yibam in the house of her father. Yesh la mizonos. In all of these situations, she receives mizonos. Rav Yehuda says, Oda Bevei Savir, Yesh la mizonos. If she's still in the house of her father, she gets mizonos. Ein Bevei Savir, but if she's not in the house of her father, Ein la mizonos. She doesn't get mizonos. So it seems to be Rav Yehuda saying the exact same thing that the Tanna Kama is saying, that if she's in the Beis Savir, she has mizonos. If she's not, she doesn't have mizonos. So the Gemara says, Rav Yehuda Hainu Tanna Kama. Isn't Rabbi Yehuda saying the same thing as the Tanna Kama? And so the Gemara says, Elalav, rather is it not Mima Enes Ika Beinayo? They're arguing about exactly our case. A Mima Enes, a girl who refuses her marriage. The Tanakama Savar Isla, the Tanakama is saying she does get Mizonos. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Lesla, and Rabbi Yehuda says she doesn't get Mizonos. And Rashi over here explains, Almona bevesavia kilomer mino erison. Again, if she's a widow, but it's only from erison, she was never really married, she was just an arusa, and then she becomes an almona, di'imin hanisuin, because if you're talking about from marriage, lo amrin and yesh la mizonos, she certainly would not get mizonos. Diad tilka chontanan v'afilo lelevi b'nisuin moda. Everybody agrees, even Levi agrees, if there was an isuin, she loses out on the mizonos. Tanakama savra mima enes isla, and the Tanakama is saying this is exactly the machlokas. A mima enes does get the mizonos. Here's what he means. Almona bevesavia, if she's an almona but in the house of her father, she was only an arusa. V'hu adin lemima'enes, and the same is true by a mima'enes. De'ein ka nisuin, that's not really a nisuin. Do'akratinu, she's undone the nisuin, and therefore the Tanakama says she's entitled to mizonos. V'yasa Rabbi Yehuda leveman, Rabbi Yehuda is coming and saying, no, ode bevesavia b'tchilasa shalo yotzta misham b'nisuin. If she was in the house of her father, meaning originally there was no nisuin at all, yesh la mizonos, then she gets mizonos. But once there was an isuin, even if she tries to uproot it, ein la, then she's no longer entitled to mizonos. And the Gemara continues, Boy, Reish Lakish asks the following question, Bas Yavama, let's say you have the daughter of a Yavama, Yesh la mizonos, or Ein la mizonos, does she get mizonos or not? Kevan Damar Mar, since the master said, Ksubos al nichse bala harishon, that the ksuba by a case of Yibum is paid from the property of the first husband, the husband who died, so lesla, so therefore she should not get mizonos. O Dilmor, maybe, Kevan di les la merishon takino la rabban misheni, since if that first husband, that the brother who died, has no property, so then the ksuba comes from the second brother, from the Yavam, so Isla, so then maybe she should get mizonos, Teiku, and the Gemara leaves that as a question. And Rashi over here explains, Bas Yavama Hakonis as Yavemta, we're talking about again a situation where the Yavam marries the Yavama, the Aldalo Bas, and they have a daughter, Yesh la mizonos la'achar misasa'av, when that father, when that Yavam dies, does she get mizonos from his estate, min ha'achin minichse aviolo, from her brothers, from the estate of her father, or not? Kevan to Amar Mar Ksubasa ina al nichse Yavam. So the master already said that the Ksuba is not paid from the property of the Yavam, so Tanai Ksuba di lo nami lav al nechasafu. So also this condition of the Ksuba, of mizonos going to the daughter, should also not come from his property. Odilmar, maybe Kevan damrin on hasami lesle nechasim larishon takinu l'rabban misheni. Since we say that if there's no property for the first husband, for the brother who died, from the brother who died, so then the ksuba is paid from the yavam, from the second husband. Kadesh lo teikala bein of lotzia, because we don't want it to be too easy for him to divorce her. We want him to have to pay if he divorces her. So islanami tanai ksuba lios biton izona. So the conditions of the ksuba will also apply, and his daughter will need to be supported from his estate. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Boy, Rebbe Lazar asks the following question. Bas Shania, let's say you have a situation of a relationship that was a Shnia relationship, meaning it was forbidden on a Durabanan level, and there's a daughter that comes from that relationship. Yesh la mizonos, or Ein la mizonos, is she entitled to mizonos or not? Rashi over here says, Bas Shnia, Mishanos, Shnia mi divrei sofrim, someone marries a woman who's prohibited on a Durabanan level in terms of being a relative. Ti'ami Rabbanan lekaman beperak almona, hashnia ein lo ksuba velo mizonos. It says over there that if you have this kind of relationship that's forbidden on a Durabanan level, so she does not get any ksuba, she doesn't get mizonos. So what about her daughter? Bita sheyalda lo v'meis. Let's say you have a situation where there was her daughter, she gave birth to him, and then he died. Yesh la mizonos min achasav olo. Does she get mizonos from his property or not? And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Dalid Amud Aleph.